Hello, everybody. This is Elsbeth Studios, and today we are looking at Thomas and Friends. Specifically, we are seeing if there are any TV series characters that would work as Railway series characters. Part 2. If you haven't already seen Part 1, then I recommend you go and watch that first, as there may be some spoilers. As always, link is in the description below. In Part 1, I looked at almost every non-human character from the model era. This time, I'm going to be going through all the non-human characters from the C.G.I. era. But before we get started, here is a quick reminder of the rules I will be using to ensure a level of consistency in my decisions. Please keep in mind that these are just my opinions. If your opinions differ, feel free to let me know in the comments below. So, first of all, to be a Railway series character, then they cannot affect the pre-established law set out by the Awdry family. They cannot affect the history or the geography of Sodor or its railways, or the existence of characters the Awdry family have already created. Secondly, these characters can have no major impact on real-life vehicles or real-life events. They must also have a real-life basis that was built prior to the show's conclusion at the end of Series 24, and if their basis was built before the show was set, then at least one example of that basis must have survived until the show started. For reference, last time I said the show seems to be stuck in this late 60s, early 70s period, so we are looking at the latter half of 1967 through to the latter half of 1972. Possibly early 1973. Characters must also have been built in the UK, or if they were built outside of the UK, at least one example must have been exported to the UK before the character first appears in the show. Characters must also have a realistic backstory and working life whilst on the island of Sodor, and no significant changes can be made to the character in order to make them fit. And with that out of the way, it is time for us to continue our journey. So, all aboard, sit back, and enjoy the ride.
I was the strongest engine at home. I was called Master of the Railway.
Hero. Hero is supposed to be the first steam engine to run on the North Western Railway. But the earliest he could have been built is 1936, after Thomas, Edward, Henry, Gordon, James and Percy have already arrived on the railway, and a good 20 years after the railway was built. So under that logic, he doesn't even work in the TV series, let alone the Railway series. Hero may be a very interesting character, but his existence completely changes the lore. So, Hero?
Oh, Kevin.
Sorry, boss. Just a slip of the
Hook. I know.
Victor. In the TV series, Victor is the engine that runs the steamworks. In the Railway series, the works uses a British Railways Class 47 diesel instead. Also, Victor is a narrow gauge engine, but in the Railway series, all the tracks leading in and out of the works are standard gauge. So, Victor?
Sorry, boss. I was trying, boss. Just a slip of me hook.
Kevin. Kevin only exists as Victor's assistant, and since Victor doesn't work in the Railway series, then neither can Kevin. So, Kevin?
Hello? Are you Thomas?
Yes, I am.
I'm Charlie. I've heard a lot about you.
You have?
The engines on the mainland say you're even more fun than me.
Charlie. Charlie is another one of those engines that we know so little about that there is no reason he can't be in the Railway series. So, Charlie?
He may need help from all of you.
Anchors away!
Probably not from you though, Captain. He's not near any water.
Don't worry!
That was just a practice!
Captain. Since Sodor is an island, it makes perfect sense for the Coast Guard to have at least one lifeboat. We already have Harold as their search and rescue helicopter, so why not have Captain as their lifeboat? The only problem with including Captain in the Railway series is that he's based at the Sodor Search and Rescue Centre on the Loop Line. Neither the Search and Rescue Centre or the Loop Line exist in the Railway series. However, Harold, Butch and Rocky are all currently based at the Search and Rescue Centre, but they were all based elsewhere before its construction, so it's highly likely that the same applies to Captain. He could have been based at Brandon Docks, or at the harbour on Thomas's Branch Line, or Tidmouth, or one of the other harbours, before he being moved to the Search and Rescue Centre. If so, then that is where he would be located if he was in the Railway series. So, Captain?
I'm Bash! I'm Dash!
And I'm Ferdinand.
Bash, Dash and Ferdinand. These three are all American logging locomotives. First of all, no American logging locomotives were ever exported to the UK. Then of course we had the fact that all three of these engines come from Misty Island. The existence of these engines and Misty Island itself has a major impact on the law, although this time it's mainly an issue of geography rather than history. The other issue with these engines is the UK only use coal-burning steam engines, but the logging locos are all oil-burning engines instead.
Oil? Not diesels?
No, but we use oil and wood for fuel! And we don't have much oil left!
That's right.
So, the logging locos?
You'll need to be repainted.
Repainted?
Scruff was horrified. He didn't even like being washed.
Scruff. Scruff is based at Whiff's Waste Dump, a location that does not exist in the Railway series. He's also seen going far and wide to collect rubbish. This is unrealistic, as his real-life basis was built for shunting purposes only, and would not have been able to travel any great distance. So, Scruff?
I can help, sir!
Bell. I know many countries have fire trains, but the UK isn't one of them. And of course, Bell is a highly unrealistic design. She is a steam engine with water cannons fitted to her water tanks. Can you see the issue here? A steam engine that uses water, so if Bell travels to a fire, she won't have enough water to put the fire out. If she does have enough water to put the fire out, then she won't have enough water to return home, or even reach the nearest water tower. In fact, this is exactly what happens in her first appearance.
But Belle couldn't puff. Belle couldn't huff. She had run out of water.
It is a ridiculous idea that would never be seen in real life. And since the Railway series is all about being realistic, then Bell doesn't work. So Bell?
Harold spotted a forest fire near Arlesdale End.
I'm on it. Fiery Flynn to the rescue.
Flynn. Until recently, all fire engines in the UK were built in the UK, although recently we started buying fire engines from Germany and Sweden. However, at the time the show is set, the UK only used British-built fire engines, but Flynn is a hybrid of fire engine designs from America, France, and what was at the time Czechoslovakia. He most closely resembles this fire truck here, made by the American company Oshkosh. Being a foreign design, he would not have been in the UK at the time the show is set. Flynn is also shown as having both road and railway wheels. Whilst there are many road vehicles with railway wheels, these are almost always for construction or maintenance purposes. Whilst many railways around the world have fire trains, there are very few examples of road-based fire engines being fitted with railway wheels. The few that do exist are all far too modern to fit the time period the TV series is set in. So, Flynn?
Oh, sorry, Mavis, I didn't realise you were in a rush. It's just,
What he means is, we'll get you back on the rails just as soon as we can.
Den and Dart. In the TV series, Victor and Kevin run the steamworks at Crowlan's Gate, whilst Den and Dart are in charge of the diesel works at Vickerstown. In the railway series, there's only one works on Sodor located at Crowlan's Gate, operated by a British Railways Class 47. This has already ruled out Victor and Kevin as being suitable for the railway series, so it rules out Den and Dart too. So, Den and Dart?
Excuse me? I wonder if, someone could help me. Maybe? Please? Ow.
Paxton. Paxton works at the Blue Mountain Quarry, a location that doesn't exist in the railway series. So, Paxton?
Hey, 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 a very special job for me. All the way to, something important, but I've forgotten what.
Sydney. Sydney has spent at least 2 years, maybe more, out of service at the Vickerstown Diesel Works, a location that doesn't exist in the railway series.
Sydney, how long have you been up there?
I'll forget.
It's been about 2 years.
I know it's a very little thing, but this is integral to his backstory, and since the Diesel Works doesn't exist, then Sydney can't exist either. So, Sydney?
The turntable at Tidner Sheds is frozen. Do you know a place we can sleep for the night?
There's room for another engine at the Diesel Works, if one of you wants to sleep there.
Norman. Norman is based off of number 11,001, just like Dennis. Both of these engines are supposedly meant to be 11,001, which means they can't coexist in the TV series, let alone the railway series. Another issue is that 11,001 was an experimental engine which was scrapped in 1959, at least a decade before Norman supposedly arrives on Sodor. So, Norman?
going down. Next stop, right to the bottom.
Owen. Owen is an incline engine that works at the Blue Mountain Quarry, a location that does not exist in the railway series. So, Owen?
Wake up, Sleepy Crane!
What have I missed something?
Merrick. Merrick is the crane based at the Blue Mountain Quarry. Again, the Blue Mountain Quarry doesn't exist in the railway series, so, just like Owen, Merrick can't exist either. So, Merrick?
Not to worry, it's early days yet.
That's right, sir. Early days. Of course, sir.
Thomas!
Winston. Winston is the Fat Controller's track inspection trolley. Now the problem with Winston is that there really isn't any need for him. Mr. Hugh, the chief engineer on the Skarloey Railway, has his own track inspection trolley, because it is a short railway operating at low speeds with poor road access. But the North Western Railway is a much larger railway with trains operating for longer distances at higher speeds. Yes, the Fat Controller could have his own track inspection trolley, but it would be very impractical. Hence why in the railway series he tends to drive around in his car. Even after Winston is introduced in the TV series, the Fat Controller is still seen using his car. Besides, with a few exceptions, the roads stay relatively close to the North Western Railway anyway, so it makes sense for the Fat Controller to use his car rather than a track inspection trolley. So, Winston?
Good morning, friend.
Morning, Luke.
Shh, Rheneas. Don't frighten my new friend.
Honestly, Luke, the quarry is no place for an animal.
Luke. Just like Paxton, Luke is based at the Blue Mountain Quarry, a location that doesn't exist in the Railway series. So, Luke.
I'm afraid my battery's running out again.
Stafford. This is another difficult one. Stafford's real-life basis would have been withdrawn from service just a couple of years before he would have arrived on Sodor. So, although unlikely, he could theoretically have made it to Sodor. The only problem is Stafford is meant to shunt the main yards, but Stafford is a battery-powered engine. Battery-powered engines are ideal for shunting small loads around small industrial sites. In this setting, their batteries can last up to 6 hours before needing to be recharged. But the long, heavy trains that require shunting in the main yard would drain Stafford's batteries much faster than this, so he would have to spend more time recharging than actually working. In this setting, he would not be very practical. So, Stafford?
Did you ever see knights in shining armour?
No! I may be old, but I'm not that old. And before you ask, I never saw dinosaurs either.
Stephen. Stephen is meant to be the real-life engine Stephenson's rocket, or commonly known as just the Rocket. So technically he already exists in the Railway series, just not in this form. The TV series version of Stephen was falling apart when he arrived on Sodor, but in reality the rocket was preserved in 1862 by the Science Museum in London. In the TV series, Stephen was rebuilt to run on Sir Robert Norramby's estate railway. In reality, the rocket hasn't run since it was preserved over 160 years ago. I know some of you will be saying, well hang on, I saw the rocket running at the National Railway Museum. Well, no, that's not the rocket, that's a duplicate made because the rocket is too old to run itself, and so we used the more modern duplicate instead. The other problem with Stephen is that the rocket had two forms, its original form and its rebuilt form. But Stephen seems to be a mixture of the two. So, Stephen?
We've come for the opening of Ulfstead Castle to bring passengers from the mainland.
This is our test run and time trial. We're having a little race. Care to join us?
Connor and Caitlin. Connor and Caitlin are American engines. Connor is a New York Central Hudson, whilst Caitlin is a Baltimore and Ohio P7. Based on when the show is most likely set, both Connor and Caitlin's respective real-life counterparts would have been scrapped around a decade before either of them came to Sodor. Incidentally, they are also far too large to run on the North Western Railway, as, like with Hank, and most other American engines, they exceed the UK's loading gauge. So, Connor and Caitlin?
The Earl's been away for such a long time, and I've been stuck in my shed. But I'm out again now, Thomas, and ready to roll!
Hold still, Millie! We're loading!
Oh, sorry, sir.
Millie. There isn't really that much wrong with Millie as such, but she is based at Sir Robert Norramby's estate railway, a railway that doesn't exist in the Railway series. Also, Millie is a narrow gauge engine, but the few examples of estate railways that exist in the UK tend to be miniature railways instead. So Millie...
Oh, I do love a bit of the old scratch and match.
Reg.
Reg is for crane located at Croc's scrapyard. In the book Edward the Blue Engine, we are shown a few pictures of Croc's scrapyard when Edward rescues Trevor, and you will notice there is no sign of the scrap crane. However, most scrap cranes like Reg probably would not have been built until he first appeared in the show, so the fact that he didn't appear in the books can be excused. And thinking about it, at the time the show is set, there was a large increase in scrap. Yes, okay, most of this was old engines and rolling stock, but there were other forms of scrap on the increase as well. So it makes sense for Croc's scrapyard to put its extra profit into buying a scrap crane like Reg. So, Reg?
I wasn't made to run on flower power, Carly!
Porter. Much like Salty, Porter is a dockside shunter. But Porter is an American engine and not one of the few classes of American engine exported to the UK during the Second World War, so it's very unlikely that he would ever have come to Sodor. Like Salty, Porter is based at the main harbour. In the TV series this is Brendam Docks, but in the railway series it's Tidmouth, so that of course opens up the question of which port do you have him based at. Given that all his stories take place at Brendam, he would be located there. However, it's a small harbour, Bill and Ben can easily manage that by themselves, and even if they couldn't, they only need one additional engine like Salty, so having another engine like Porter is just excessive, it's pointless, there's no need for him. So, Porter?
Hi everyone! How did this place end up in such a mess? Well, not to worry. If we work together, we can get this cleaned up in no time.
Timothy! No, not that Timothy, the other, that Timothy, the oil-burning Timothy, yeah. Timothy is based off a design of an oil-burning steam engine that was built in America, with most examples being exported to Cuba or South America. Hardly anything is known about these engines, but since they're all oil burners, they would not have been found in the UK anyway, which primarily use coal-burning steam engines. Oil-burning engines are typically used in places such as lumber yards, oil depots, or munitions factories, because they are less likely to let off sparks and thus significantly reduce the risks of fire or explosions. This of course makes no sense at the China clay pits, where there is nothing that could catch fire. So under that logic, you might as well have another coal-burning steam engine like Bill and Ben. So, Timothy?
I love thinking about digging. Not as much as I love digging, of course. Digging is what I'm all about, really, but... Oh dear, this is embarrassing. I forgot to ask you your name. You should always introduce yourself. It's only polite. That's what I've always been told, anyway. Shall I go first? Let me introduce myself. I'm Marion, and you are...
Thomas. Do you always talk this much?
Not particularly, no. I wouldn't say that. I'm more of a digger, to be honest.
Marion. So we have reached the steam shovel. As bizarre as Marion is, there is no reason I can think of that prevents her being a Railway Series character. Yes, technically she is an American design, but at least one member of her class was exported to the UK back in 1927, and there might have been more. Though her usage is rather limited, she is an oddity, and we know just how much the Fat Controller's family likes collecting oddities, don't we? So, Marion?
It's the monster from the clay pits!
Huh?
The monster? Oh!
Oh, hello.
Ha ha! That be no monster, Percy. That be an engine.
A monster? Oh, I don't usually get mistaken for a monster. Mind you, They do call me Gator. It seems they think my long sloping water tank makes me look like an alligator.
Gator. Gator is a steam motor engine. I'm not entirely sure how I'm supposed to explain what a steam motor is, but what I can tell you is that they almost never worked properly. Technically, these engines were built in the UK, but all of them were exported to Colombia, with none of them ever returning. These engines were also built to run on meter gauge tracks rather than the standard gauge tracks used in the UK. I know Gator is technically located in Colombia in the TV series and only comes to Sodor to visit, but that does mean re-gauging him for his time on Sodor from meter gauge to standard gauge, and then re-gauging him back from standard gauge to meter gauge again when he has to go home. Yes, that is possible, but it's very, very unlikely that something like that would happen. So, Gator?
Samson, I think you might be making a mistake.
Just because I got lost when I first came to the island, everyone thinks I'm going to make another mistake. But I know what I'm doing.
Okay, if you say so, but...
Samson. Samson regularly pulls trains between Sodor and the mainland. In reality, this likely wouldn't happen, since Samson is only a tank engine and would be around 100 years old at this point. Although having said that, it's not entirely beyond reason. It is possible that the North Western Railway did acquire Samson at some point and used him for odd jobs, such as taking trucks back and forth across the border between the North Western Railway and the railways on the mainland. So I'd have to say Samson does work as a Railway Series character, but, as with many, only by a very slim margin. So, Samson?
I used to pull slip coaches. Coaches which could be uncoupled without even stopping.
The slip coaches. The original Fat Controller, Sir Topham Hatt I, trained as an engineer at Swindon Works on the Great Western Railway. His son Charles II was the Fat Controller when Duck, Oliver, Toad and 4 Great Western Auto coaches were all brought to Sodor. So it's safe to say that the Fat Controller's family has a soft spot for anything from the Great Western Railway. Therefore, it is quite likely that the Fat Controller might have saved at least one Great Western Railway slip coach. The only problem is that in real life, slip coaches were nowhere near as practical as they sounded. Many slip coaches suffered serious mechanical issues and didn't always manage to safely separate from the rest of the train. In fact, this was actually demonstrated in their first appearance in the show. So whilst it is entirely possible that the Fat Controller required one or more slip coaches at some point, he almost certainly wouldn't risk using them. So, the slip coaches?
Well, look after the branch line, Thomas, and wear that number with pride.
Don't worry, Mr. Coffee Pot. I will. You can count on me.
But I'm not Mr. Coffee Pot. My name is Glenn.
Glyn. Technically, you could argue that Glyn already exists in the Railway series, as the original Fat Controller, Sir Topham Hatt, built 4 coffee pot engines like Glyn to run the Tidmouth, Knapford and Elsbridge Light Railway, part of what is now Thomas's branch line. These engines remained in service until the branch line was extended from Elsbridge to Farker, and Thomas took over the line in 1925. It is unknown what exactly happened to the coffee pots after that, but it is assumed that they were scrapped. Of course, in the TV series, it is assumed that Glyn was scrapped until Thomas found them again about 40 years later, so it's possible that something similar could have occurred in the Railway series. And of course, Glyn's real-life basis was abandoned, only to be rediscovered and restored just a few years before the show is set. So, Glyn?
Wake up, lazy wheels!
Judy! Jerome?
Emergency! Where
Where's the accident?
Is an engine off the rails?
Or is it a breakdown?
A fire?
A bridge out?
No. I just wondered where you were going, that's all.
Judy and Jerome. Since Judy and Jerome are the North Western Railway's breakdown train, you could argue that they already exist in the Railway series. The only difference is that the Railway series breakdown cranes are Cowan Sheldon 45-ton cranes, whilst Judy and Jerome are Cowan Sheldon 30-ton cranes. But then again, they wouldn't be the first TV series character that doesn't look quite the same as their Railway series counterpart. This of course due to the fact that the model makers were not railway experts and were limited by the components they could get a hold of. Unsurprisingly, all the mistakes made by the model makers ended up being transferred over into C.G.I. Now of course, since all the rolling stock is shown to be sentient in the Railway series, it does make sense that the breakdown cranes are sentient too. So, Judy and Jerome?
Make yourself at home.
Thank you, Philip. Oh dear. Time for me to get some shut-eye.
You know, James must have been going really fast to have a crash like that.
Yes, much too fast. Anyway, good night, Philip.
Have you ever gone really fast, Edward? Have you ever had a nasty accident?
Philip. Philip is a hybrid of two American diesel box cab designs, neither of which were ever exported to the UK at any point. And in a similar situation to Stafford, Philip would work well in a light industrial site, but he wouldn't be particularly suitable for shunting the heavy trains in the main yards where he's based. So, Philip?
Roadline? I think that's where I'm meant to be working.
Ryan, my new tank engine. You're here.
New tank engine? But...
Come on, Ryan. Let's get started.
Ryan. Ryan runs the line to Harwich. In the Railway series, this line was planned in 1914, but the project was abandoned by 1916 and the line only ran as far as Alsborough. This later became Duck's branch line. Since the line from Alsborough to Harwich doesn't exist in the Railway series, then neither can Ryan. So, Ryan?
Up anchor! Up anchor!
Oh, yes, right. No! Skip! Stop!
Oh no!
Oh no!
Skiff. A railboat such as Skiff is a totally ridiculous idea. That said, it hasn't stopped many people from trying to build their own, such as the Spooner's boat on the Festiniog Railway in Wales. Even so, the idea is highly impractical. And just like Ryan, Skiff is based on the Harwich line, which doesn't exist in the Railway series. So, Skiff?
Sorry, sir. I was not thinking.
Hugo. Hugo is supposed to be the Schienenzeppelin, or Rail Zeppelin in English. This was a one-off experimental propeller-driven train built in Germany. There are two problems. First of all, propellers are very, very dangerous. Secondly, propellers are highly impractical on railways. Propeller-driven trains have virtually no pulling power, and they can't climb hills. Due to it being highly impractical and very dangerous, there is no way a rail zeppelin will be allowed to operate on an already accident-prone North Western Railway. The other problem is the Schienenzeppelin was scrapped in 1939 by the Germans, so it could be used to provide materials for the Second World War. This, of course, is more than 2 decades before Hugo came to Sodor. So, Hugo?
I'm in charge now, so no bumping and none of you a cheek!
But we like bumping!
Not on my watch, matey. This is now a bump-free zone. Oh dear, outside, never mind. When you're ready, Thomas.
Bradford. Ah, Bradford. The strict no-nonsense brake van. Makes a nice change from the other brake vans we've had so far. The spiteful brake van was just a jerk, and Toad is far too patient and polite. But Bradford reminds me of an army drill sergeant. Even his paint scheme has military vibes. In fact, his personality is meant to be based off of a senior military officer in the British comedy programme It Ain't Half Hot, Mum. I can very easily see Bradford being acquired by the War Department during the Second World War, which would explain his no-nonsense attitude. And then, of course, after the war he would have been reassigned to work with Samson. So, Bradford?
Everything looks so very
good day! Bonjour!
Come on, the shrimp!
Hey, stop! Wait! Oh, watch out!
Where are you all going?
To the Great Railway Show, of course.
The Great Railway Show's not here. It's happening on the mainland. This is the island of Sodor.
The island of... Oops.
Everybody back on the ship!
Back up!
The Great Race Engines. Yeah, I know I probably should be going through all of them one at a time, but I put them all together because they all face exactly the same problem. They're all foreign. None of these engines have a real-life basis that was exported to the UK, and the only reason these engines came to the UK at all was for a fictional event, so that rules them out as suitable Railway Series characters straight away. Not to mention the fact that the Great Railway Show they all attended took place in the UK, which operates at standard gauge. Now this may be alright for Young Bao, Carlos, Vinny, Gina, Frida, Axel and Etienne, but the Shima was built for a meter gauge railway, whilst Rajiv, Shane, Raoul and Ivan were all built for broad gauge railways, so none of them would have been compatible in the UK anyway. Yes, I know, engines can be regauged, but it's a lengthy process, it usually doesn't work, so I doubt any of these engines would have been regauged to attend this event, only to be regauged back again to go home. So, the Great Race engines? Hannah. Hannah, also known as Hasty Hannah, is the same type of tramway coach as Henrietta, and would have worked on the same tramway as Toby. The problem with that is that Henrietta is described as the last of her kind, and the only other surviving coach from her old tramway is a bogie coach. Hannah's existence contradicts this version of events, and thus changes the law. So, Hannah?
Who's that? What's happening? All hands on deck. Who's making all that noise? It's you, Carly.
Carly. Carly only exists to help out Cranky, but since I've already ruled out Cranky, I have to rule out Carly by default. So, Carly?
Thanks for asking.
Beresford. Beresford is a rolling gantry crane that operates on an unknown wharf serving a canal somewhere on the mainland. From a purely historical and geographical point of view, there is nothing wrong with Beresford's existence. He was designed in Bristol in southwest England, but cranes like him were built all over the UK, and some even as far away as New Zealand. Beresford would have been built somewhere between 1912 and 1952, long before he first met Thomas, and a few examples still exist today. However, I've also got to consider Beresford's personality and behaviour, such as picking up a fishing boat straight out of the canal and deliberately dumping it on the rails as a train is approaching. Highly unrealistic behaviour if you ask me. In fact, I'd also debate whether or not a crane like Beresford is even strong enough to pick up an entire boat or a tank engine, as that's not what they were designed for lifting. In order for Beresford to work as a Railway Series character, a major change would need to be made to his personality. So, Beresford?
Maybe you can help me out.
Us? Help you?
I doubt it.
Oh, sorry, no.
I don't think so. Nope, nope, nope. You're barking up the wrong branch line there, buddy boy.
Lexi. There really isn't much to say about Lexi that I haven't said about all the other foreign engines and oil-burning engines I've already mentioned. She is unique by being the only cab-forward steam engine to appear in the show, but despite several attempts made, cab-forward engines never really caught on. And of course, nearly all cab-forward designs were oil-burning engines, which is in contrast to the UK, which mainly used coal-burning engines instead. So, Lexi?
You'll have to tow him to the coal hopper.
Me?
Oh.
Come on, Theo!
Woohoo! All right! Hey! Okay, start pulling, Theo!
Theo. Theo is based off of an outdated and highly impractical design dating back to 1802. Since this engine was not preserved, then it's almost impossible for Theo to exist either. So, Theo?
My name is Thomas.
And my name is Hurricane. You know, like a storm. Whoosh!
Wow.
Hurricane. Hurricane is supposed to be an experimental O10O tank engine called the Decapod. However, the Decapod was rebuilt into a tender engine back in 1906 and later scrapped in 1913, a good half a century before Thomas meets Hurricane. So, Hurricane?
Put the ingots in the cooling area and make sure you empty all the slag onto the slag heap, little tank engine. And when you've done all of that, you can sort out the trucks in the yard. I expect them ready when we get back to collect the next delivery.
But I need to go home to Sodor now, Frankie.
No way, little tank engine. We helped you, so you have to help us.
But I have been helping you.
Frankie. There is nothing stopping Frankie being a Railway Series character, except for the fact that she works with 4 other engines that don't work as Railway Series characters. And that one reason alone is enough to rule her out as well. So, Frankie?
I can do something.
Merlin.
Invisibility on!
Merlin. Merlin is supposed to be a Southern Railway King Arthur class engine called Sigillamere. This engine was fitted with 2 extra funnels as part of a wartime experiment. However, after the war was over, these extra funnels were removed. But Merlin is still shown having his extra funnels, which contradicts known historical events. There was another member of the same class called Merlin, but that engine was never given extra funnels. So, Merlin?
I like to be helpful wherever I can. And it's not very busy around here at the moment. So that means I can help you. 2 engines are much better than 1, you know.
I don't need any help. I can do this by myself.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings.
Nia. Nia is based on a class of engine built in the UK, but the entire class was exported to Kenya and Uganda in Africa, with some of them later going to Tanzania, which is where Nia met Thomas. However, Thomas is a standard gauge engine, whereas most railways in that part of Africa, especially the ones Nia ran on, were meter gauge. Not only does this make Nia's presence on Sodor highly questionable, but it also makes the entire movie, Big World Big Adventure, an impossibility as well. But that's a topic for another day. So, Nia? Ace. I've already ruled out Nia as a Railway Series character, principally because of what happens in Big World Big Adventures. Since Big World Big Adventures is such an integral part of Ace's backstory, and we virtually never see him again after that, I think he can be safely ruled out as well. So, Ace?
Sorry I'm late.
You're not late, Rebecca. You're early again. Gordon's right. You've been getting everywhere too early. You have caused confusion and confusion and, a great deal of confusion.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
Rebecca. Rebecca was introduced as another express engine to help Gordon, but she had been shown to do lots of other work, such as pulling trucks. This actually works quite well, because her real-life basis, the West Country class, also known as the Battle of Britain class, were mixed traffic engines which often ended up being put on express duties, but were also seen pulling trucks quite regularly. Admittedly, Rebecca was quite childish, gullible and clumsy despite being in her 20s at the time the show was set. Although having said that, Thomas and Percy were still quite childish and immature back when they were in their 20s. So I can let that slide. The only issue with Rebecca being in the Railway Series is her livery. But then again, there are a number of Railway Series characters that have the wrong livery in the TV series. Just look at Donald and Douglas or the Skarloey engines, for instance. So, Rebecca?
I'm not gonna do it! What did you say? I don't want to steal things no more. I want to be really useful.
But stealing things is really useful.
Listen here, you clanking clot. If you don't help us, there's a scrapyard with your name on it.
Oh, is there really a scrapyard called Sunny?
Oh, Bernie!
Sonny. Oddly enough, there isn't really anything that would prevent Sonny being in the Railway Series from a geographical or historical point of view. Yes, he is about 90 years old at the time the show is set, but at least one member of his class was in service for all 90 of those years before finally being withdrawn. So that fits. The only problem with Sonny is his origin story. He is brought to Sodor by two thieves to help steal a hover car. Yes, really, they were going to use a steam engine to steal a hover car. Do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds? I should probably point out that hover cars don't exist today, let alone 50 to 60 years ago when this supposedly was supposed to happen. Sadly, this one tiny little detail rules Sonny out. So, Sonny?
He's big!
He's strong!
And he's the fastest engine in the world!
Let's hear it for
Kenji!
Wow! He's amazing!
Kenji. Kenji is a power car from a Zero Series Shinkansen bullet train. These trains only operated in Japan. I know there is technically a Zero Series Shinkansen at the National Railway Museum in York, but it never ran on British rails. In fact, there are no railways in the UK, including those on Sodor, suitable for a Japanese bullet train. So, Kenji could not have come to Sodor. Kenji can't even be the bullet train at the National Railway Museum, because Thomas visited the museum in 1990, but the bullet train didn't arrive there until 2001. So, Kenji?
Cleo, I think we need to stop now. But why? I'm going to win! Because Gordon is heading straight for us. Gordon? What's a Gordon? That's a Gordon!
Express coming through!
Cleo! Reverse! 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 I'm reversing! I'm reversing! I'm reversing!
Out of my way!
Wrong way, Cleo. Wellsworth is...
Get off my track!
Oh no.
Cleo. Honestly, I have no idea what Cleo is supposed to be. She doesn't even have a real-life basis. Apparently, she's supposed to be a car at a road-based vehicle made entirely out of railway locomotive components. I've heard of people turning road vehicles into trains, but I don't think I've seen anybody do it the other way around. The idea is just too ridiculous. This isn't surprising, as Cleo debuted in the show at around the same time as numerous other wacky machines that don't exist were introduced. I mean, seriously, can you imagine what it would be like if we had these giant dancing robots? Cleo was also shown to be able to drive herself. Keeping in mind that about 60 years later we still haven't perfected self-driving cars, there is no way a self-driving car could have existed at the time the show was set. So, Cleo?
Oh, it's you! I'm sorry for what I said earlier. I thought you were taking one of my coaches, and I've very important passengers to collect, and it's my... Bless you! Oh, how rude of me. I should introduce myself. My name's Duchess. Duchess of Loughborough.
And mine's Thomas. Thomas of Sodor.
Duchess of Loughborough. And so we come to the final character. The Duchess of Loughborough, simply known as Duchess, is an LMS coronation class. However, her smoke deflectors come from the similar LMS Royal Scot class, and her tender is an LNER corridor tender, like those found on the Mallard and Flying Scotsman. Normally, engines don't have components from different engine classes, but in the Railway series, Gordon, who was an LNER design, was partially rebuilt using LMS components. So an LMS engine with an LNER tender, like Duchess, isn't entirely out of the question in the Railway series. In fact, the London North Eastern Railway regularly reassigned tenders to different engines depending on their job roles. In her one and only appearance on the show, Duchess is chosen to pull the Royal Train. This actually fits quite well, as another member of the same class, Duchess of Sutherland, also pulled the Royal Train. The only problem with Duchess is her livery, but as I've said before, there are many TV series characters that don't wear their Railway series livery, so that can be overlooked. So, Duchess? And so, that is the last of the characters from Thomas and Friends that I will be looking at today. But before we finish, there is just one more thing. Yep, Thomas and Friends' sister show, Tugs. Now, I've already made a video in the past comparing both of these shows, as well as voicing my opinion on the age-old question, are they in the same universe? If you haven't seen that video already, then please do go and check it out. Link is in the description below. For those of you who have already seen that video, you know that in my opinion, I believe that Tugs is set in the same universe as Thomas and Friends. Again, I must stress that this has not been confirmed, it is just my opinion. In that video, I also said that the characters from Tugs would work well in the Railway series. Well, let's see if I'm right, shall we? So, first of all, the Railway series characters, then the characters from Tugs can have no effect on the pre-established lore. Given that Tugs is set in the 1920s in Big City, which is a fictional harbour on the east coast of the United States, while Sodor is a fictional island that's part of the UK, then the two have next to no effect on each other. This of course means no historical or geographical changes need to be made either. So looking good so far. But what about real world history? Well, considering that Tugs was a very short-lived show and had very little information to go on, it did seem to tie in well with the real world. For instance, in America, every year on the 4th of July they celebrate what they call Independence Day. This of course ties in with Tugs, as every year on the 4th of July they hold an annual parade and regatta, again most likely celebrating Independence Day. Now, much like Thomas and to a lesser extent the Railway series, the episodes in Tugs mainly had a fictional storyline, although having said that, some episodes were based off of real life events. Take for example the episode Regatta. In this episode, Lily Lightship is struck by another vessel in fog and starts to sink. This is based off of a real life incident where the RMS Olympic, sister ship of the infamous Titanic, rammed into Nantucket Lightship LV-117 in heavy fog. Being much smaller and weaker than the massive steamship cruising towards it, the lightship was torn in half and sank. However, even in the episodes that weren't based off of real life events, the stories themselves were still realistically plausible. Best example of this would be the episode Trapped. During this episode, Zug was trying to transport an old rusty tramp steamer up a narrow river. Somehow he lost control of the tramp steamer and he got jammed across the river, blocking it. This has since been compared to the ship Ever Given, which ended up blocking the Suez Canal back in 2021. But what about the characters themselves? Well, every character was, to some extent, based off of a real-life vehicle, although in most cases, not any vehicle in particular. This is hardly surprising, as this was set during a time when many ships were still freelance designs modified to perform certain tasks. This would explain that whilst based off of real-life tugboats, most of the tugs do not have an exact basis. The same applies to the two railroad locomotives in Big City, Puffer and Little Owl, as in those days many locomotive builders, such as Baldwin, would regularly build one-off locomotives built to perform specific duties on the railroads that bought them. Now, of course, some characters did have a specific real-life basis. These characters include OJ, Hercules, and even Billy Shoepack. And interestingly, in every single case, at least one example has survived into preservation. Except for Grampus. Now, you see, Grampus was a plunger-class submarine. These were sunk in the 1920s, many of which was being used for target practice. Now, Tugs is set in the early 1920s, and at that time, the remaining members of Grampus's real-life basis, the plunger-class submarines, were sunk during target practice. This, of course, was meant to be Grampus's intended fate, until the Star Tugs intervened and saved him. This would make Grampus the last of his kind. But in the Railway series there are many characters which are the last of their kind, such as Thomas. And many of those characters, best example being Toby, were conveniently saved at the same time their real-life basis was withdrawn and scrapped. So the fact that Grampus somehow survived and the rest of his real-life counterparts were scrapped is something I can let slide. The characters themselves all work perfectly as they are. They have realistic appearances, they have realistic personalities, they demonstrate realistic behaviour. Yeah, they're fine as far as I can work out. No changes need to be made to them, they can be left as they are, that's fine. The characters also demonstrate realistic working practices. The two tugboat fleets even represent a realistic business rivalry. The show also represents the typical superstitions which sailors believed back in those days. For example, the tugboat Captain Harry was a fine ship, but once he was renamed the Boomer, everything seemed to go wrong for him. This is based on the real-life superstition that changing a ship's name will cause the ship and those who sail on it to have bad luck. Now, as I've already mentioned, Grampus was meant to be sunk during target practice. At the time that Tugs is set, the Navy often used outdated vessels for targets during target practice, so that fits as well. And that brings us to the end of our video. Of course, whilst we have a near endless supply of information for characters from the Railway series, which characters can and can't be in and a pretty substantial amount of information for most characters. I know it's given me a lot to think about regarding my History of Sodor series, and we have very little information to work with when it comes to Tugs. So unfortunately that will be delayed a little longer, but hopefully based on the information that is available, in the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments which of these characters you at the beginning of this video series. I'll see you again soon. And as I said, in my opinion, I do believe the two universes to be linked. So, characters from Tugs.